once you've got your shelter set up, your fire lay set up, and you know what you're eating for tea, then there is quite a lot of downtime which I like to fill with reading. So this is 5 books that you can read while you're in the outdoors. Number 1, A Year in the Woods. This is by a guy called Colin Alford. He's a park ranger in England, and this is kind of his diary for a year when he's living and working out in nature every day, taking care of the countryside basically. The first chapter of this, like just the preface, which is like written about the author, got me completely on board. You know, it was talking about how the guy has spent so much of his time in forest since he's been outside, how he isn't scared of woods, how he's like always found peace in forests and in nature compared to kind of the human world, which I obviously identify with a lot. So Year in the Woods, definitely worth picking up. The second one is The Way Home by Mark Boyle. So it's called Tales from a Life Without Technology. So Mark Boyle did a book called The Moneyless Man, where he lived without money at all for I think a year, and he bartered for things. He did kind of manual work in trade for things. So this book is him returning to that kind of natural way of living. It's not as extreme as The Moneyless Man, but he does cancel all his direct debits, get rid of all of his bills, cancels his phone, gets rid of that, doesn't know what time it is, he just gets up with the natural like circadian rhythms of the sun, and works on the land. He gets himself a little small holding and he lives on the land and he works on the land. It's a really interesting book to read, mostly because a lot of the stuff he's talking about in there is our reliance on technology now. How we've lost skills that we used to have as people. Our connection to the land isn't there anymore. You know, same with our food. We're quite a few steps removed from our food source, from our water source. A lot of the things that would make you a self-sustainable person are illegal in the UK. Or you need permits for, you need planning permission for, all these kind of things. So actually getting food, water and shelter is a lot more difficult these days, and he kind of goes into why that is. Really interesting book, but a nice calm one and a good one to read while you're outside. This next one you've probably seen me reading before if you've seen any of my overnighters down here in the field. This is Call of the Wild by Guy Grieve. Guy is from Scotland, and he was living in, I think, Edinburgh, working in the city, working in an office, and then had this dream of going and living in the wilderness. So he quits his job, gets a bunch of stuff together to go to Alaska and try and spend the winter in the interior of Alaska. Learns how to build a cabin and track bears, and looks out for wolves, and clears a portage track so he can get his supplies up to his cabin. And he kind of goes there with this kind of naive attitude of, oh, I'm just going to be able to go and survive in nature, it's going to be great. And then very quickly learns from the really kind Alaskan people who take him in and teach him these things, that the main thing he needs to learn is respect for nature, and that he can't just impose his will upon the natural world. Which is a really interesting book, a really funny book, written not quite like The Journey Home in like a diary format, but this is written more like a book, but it's still just his experiences day to day, you know, and the journey that he goes through to build the cabin and to survive a winter in Alaska is really an amazing read. I'm actually reading it slowly just because I don't want it to end. Really, really good book. The next one is Walden, Henry David Thoreau. Obviously a bit of a classic. It's a really old book. I'm not sure. So he was alive 1817 to 1862. So it would have been the 1800s it was written in. Similar thing to what Mark Boyle was saying, like the over-reliance on technology, the move away from nature and the natural world, and he decided to go the other way. So he went, built a cabin, and then lived 2 years in the wilderness basically, and wrote down his thoughts as he was doing it. It's kind of hard to read now because it's written in such an old language. It's really formal, the words are really big. It's not the easiest book to just pick up and just get into, but every few sentences there's a gem. There'll be one sentence in there that's really amazing. So it's worth the read, even if you read it just a little bit at a time like I am, just to get the little jewels of information that he puts in. And he questions a lot of things that people take for granted, especially now. Mortgages, house prices, how much you have to work in relation to how much time you get to live. So it's a really good kind of thinking out the box book, and really kind of famous thing about the book, is that the things you own end up owning you. Interesting one. And then the last one, another classic. So it's Bushcraft 101, the Field Guide to Wilderness Survival. So it's by Dave Canterbury. He was on that History Channel program where two people survived. It was him and Cody, someone, the dude who doesn't wear shoes. I can't remember his name. He got a bit of slack because apparently he'd fabricated some of the stuff on his CV to get that job and was fired from the show. No matter what you think of him personally though, this book is really, really good. The follow-up book is really, really good as well. And like for a really good intro to bushcraft and kind of wilderness techniques, it's super handy to have. I read it, you know, 6 months ago when I was just starting to learn about this kind of stuff, didn't know what anything was. I don't know if you can see, there's like really good diagrams. It's well written, but it's short, which is really good. So it gives you like how to set up a pot hanger, for example, or how to set up a tarp, different kinds of tarps, how to do a fire lay, how to get a fire going with different tinder sources or whatever it might be. Yeah, it's a really good book, full of information. So if you're just getting into bushcraft, I definitely recommend Bushcraft 101. So that was 5 books to read that are about the outdoors while you're out in the outdoors. Yeah, hopefully you enjoy them. If you have any book recommendations on similar things that I should read, then let me know in the comments below. Thanks.